Maybe.
We'll make it back later then. I don't I can make another little boat.
Let's keep it. Look. Santa. 26th of December, he's on the beach, he's having a day off.
Right, when you're ready, I'll strip over there. So, alright. While you're looking. Are you going to this keys? This place? What are these? Do I need this?
You can put it back in there. Go on. Third. Pick that one up.
suitable for a size. All right, let's take a look at a horseshoe crab. I'm going to sneak right over here and grab that one. Thank you. Okay, this is a horseshoe crab. Now you'll notice as I'm holding it upside down, it looks to be a little bit more like a spider or a scorpion than it does to a crab. That's because this animal is actually more closely related to spiders and scorpions than it is to the crab family. You'll see it's got 5 pair of legs, and at the ends of 8 of those legs are tiny pinchers. However, those pinchers have very weak muscles, so they're not going to hurt you at all. All this animal uses those pinchers for is to pick up its food. What it does is it travels along the bottom of the ocean, and as it walks, it uses all 10 of those legs to scoop up its food and cram it in its mouth, which is located right in the center of all those legs. This animal actually does have to walk in order to eat. Now another interesting point about the horseshoe crab is that it has 3 sets of eyes. The first set are pretty obvious, they're right at the top. These are the animal's primary eyes, they're the largest. Now the secondary eyes aren't quite so obvious, they look as though they could be a little tiny nose or a little pair of nostrils right there in the center, but those are actually secondary eyes. And the third set of eyes are even less obvious. They are microscopic, but they're located right on that flat plate on the animal's underside. Now what the horseshoe crab uses that third set of eyes for is to detect light rays. If it is upside down in the water, it's going to sense those light rays and flip itself right back over to protect that soft underside from any predators. Now that third set of eyes comes in very handy for this animal because it doesn't have a sense of equilibrium as you and I do or as other animals do. You know, you're all very welcome to come up and handle any of these animals. None of them will hurt you. We just ask you, please remember they are living, so please use a little bit of caution when doing so. Okay, let's move right. Now that coating prevents any skin disease or any infections. So if we touch this animal too much, we're simply going to run that coating right off, and that's going to leave them open to any illness. So we do want to be careful not to pet this animal as it swims around the tank. Now stingrays don't actually have teeth in their mouths. They have what's called a crushing plate. They use that crushing plate in the wild to eat their favorite foods like clams or oysters. They can grind or crush right through that shell and get the meat on the inside. It's pretty powerful. If you were to eat an inside stingray, you probably would sit here. Your fingers are very hard to work.
Right on.
Stingrays keep their name because located about a foot down their tail in the spine top there called a bar. Now if you were to step to the back of the stingray, what does it do on itself? If it would whip its tail around, stick that foot in the corner in your ankle or your foot, and that's what's called stinging. Mexico, because they lay their eggs for daylight hours, cultures and other people know that mosquito eggs. Well, scientists have been studying showing that there are actually less than 500 of those beautiful nests living left in the world. Now, did you all hear that sucking sound that it made? Well, nurse sharks make that sucking sound because they have shark, I just ask you, please have your cameras ready as they come around, because they can get a little bit jumpy. Now you don't need to be afraid that I'm going to hurt this shark. I'm not going to hurt it at all. It can really be out of the water for quite a long time, as long as we keep the gill slits moist, and as long as we don't have them in the direct sunlight where they can dry out. Okay, want that still? No! And for that reason, they made the first pair of boots worn on the moon out of shark skin. Shark skin also has a fancy name called dermal ventricles. Now what that stands for is taste buds. And what that means is that while you're really concerned because we have so many sharks in such a small tank, well, this is how these sharks really live in the wild. They actually sleep piled on top of each other for more safe, secure feeling. So if we were to take some of these sharks out, it would actually be putting them under stress. Okay, did I miss anybody? Alrighty, well, I'm going to put this shark back. And if y'all would like to head out to the big shark tank out back, on a big shark, one bull shark, and we do have two beautiful small tube sawfish. What I'm going to do first here is bring a little bit of this fish blood into the water and see if I can stimulate their appetite. That's because sharks have a very keen sense of smell, and they can actually detect one drop of that oily fish blood in up to 1 million drops of seawater up to a mile away. Have a lateral line. You can probably see it on the side of this one here. And what the lateral line does is detect any electrical waves or any motion in the water, so it pretty much helps the shark figure out where the food is. Now, as I mentioned, we have two sawfish out here. We have a 14-foot sawfish and a 10-foot sawfish. 14-foot sawfish is actually our largest animal here in the aquarium. These sawfish are pretty interesting animals because they have a crushing plate in their mouths like the stingrays, so they are actually more closely related to stingrays than they are to sharks. However, they do have teeth and they're located on their nose. On sawfish, its mouth is kind of like a sword. And we use that nose in a couple different ways. It's called a rostrum. What it will do is bring that rostrum up through a school of fish, killing or injuring them, and it will also break the bottom of the ocean with that rostrum. Get it up here, we'll show you where they are. Now the lemon sharks and the bull sharks are the have the same special pumping muscle as the nurse shark inside has. So that allows these sharks also to find motions from the bottom of the ocean. There's a lemon shark right there. Lemon sharks can grow to be about 10.5 feet long. And they get their name because they have a lemony yellow tint to their skin on their underbelly. As they get older, they turn a little bit more gray in color. Now, the lemon on the other hand, if the bull shark were to come up, he would make one clean bite right into the fish. His teeth are much larger. See how it scratches his head around like that? He'll bite right out of it.
Einmal reingebissen, dass sie sehen, wie die will.
Get one more. Now, it was once thought that sharks had to eat continuously in order to live. But we now know that that is not true. Looks like developers are a little more interested than the sharks are.
It's getting seawater.
Give it another minute or two here. stony and very bloody, however. The tarpon can live to be 100 years old. It can grow to be 6 feet long, weighing up to 300 pounds. Now the tarpon can also fight on a fishing line for hours upon hours, sometimes a day or a day and a half. So it does make for a great game fish. Right out in the center here is one of our baby lemon sharks. We've got 2 of those in here. And those, of course, are much smaller than the ones we saw outside, out back. And as I mentioned, those sharks can grow to be about 10.5 feet long.
Well, that's some Jewfish. I thought that was a no wonder. Okay. That one's like fat.
Yeah.
It's small. It's all good.
Oh, it is a member of the fruit family. Okay. Now, uncommon now.
Tomorrow hill.
Another kilo one, right? Where's my big one there? It's here next time. That one, yeah. Oh, sounds like an alien, isn't it?
Take a photo still. Photo. Still on hold. Good? Yeah.
know what it is. It's strange.
After the Civil War, the upper level was used as a sail loft, and the lower level was used as a coaling depot for Navy steam-powered ships. Built in 91, Carlisle was built in 1891 of Romanesque Revival architecture by the Irish bricklayers. That building has served as our customs house, a post office, and a federal courthouse where many of our shipwreck private cases were heard. The oblique monument to the left of the train was erected in remembrance to the 167 Civil War soldiers who lost their lives to the yellow fever epidemic. Once part of our active duty Navy base, but it's now privately owned. We're heading directly for two green gates near the Presidential Gate. The Presidential Gates are only to be opened by U.S. Presidents while in Port of the Navy. If we would keep traveling straight through the gates for about 1 block on Caroline Street, we would arrive at the Little White House. The Little White House was home to President Harry S. Truman from 1946 until 1952. The Little White House is open daily for tours. The last president to use the gate was President John F. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. The white buildings on our right were used for officers' quarters when that area was owned by the Navy. To the right of the train behind the Spanish laurel tree is the new Key West Post Office, built in 1985 by Charles Sonny McCoy, a former mayor and local architect. Mr. McCoy incorporated the Martello Port style of architecture. Sonny McCoy is also in the Guinness Book of World Records about the size of my hand. In 1931, Ernest Hemingway decided to make his home in Key West for a little over 10 years. Following his tragic death in 1961, his wife sold the 1-acre estate to some friends, who now opened it as a museum for all of us to enjoy. In just about 1 block on the left side of the train, behind a red brick wall, you'll see the Hemingway home. There's a lush tropical garden on the grounds of the Hemingway home. Papa Hemingway planted many of the trees himself. It's also home to the island's first swimming pool, a saltwater pool. Papa was truly a fancier of cats, and he had over 50 cats of the 6-toed variety. Many of their descendants still roam the estate today. The Hemingway home is open daily from 9 to 5. Towering above the banyan tree to the right is the Key West Lighthouse, built in 1847. Its light was last used in 1969. The white building to our right with the green shutters is the old lightkeeper's home, which has been renovated and is now a museum. You can climb to the top of the Key West Lighthouse 110 feet in the air and look out across the city. In 1831, William Rawl began importing loose Cuban tobacco and laborers to form the Key West cigar industry. Our industry grew so rapidly at the time because it was cheaper to bring loose Cuban tobacco here, hand roll the cigars, and then sell them around the world. Hand rolled cigars directly out of Havana were taxed at a much higher rate. But 157 miles to Miami. Key West is 85 miles farther south than Brownsville, Texas, and on the world map we're farther south than Cairo, Egypt.
Okay.
Behind the brown wall to the right of the train, that's the southernmost home in the continental United States. During the 1930s and 40s, Miss Thelma Strable lived there. She wrote a novel about our wrecking industry, Reap the Wild Wind, which was later turned into a movie starring John Wayne and Ray Milland. On the left behind the coconut palm, that home was built in 1885 by Eduardo H. Gaudo, a wealthy cigar factory owner. It's the southernmost guest house. And on the right is the original southernmost home, built in 1899 by Judge Vining Harris, our local customs officer. As we come through the intersection, you can peer over your right shoulder and you'll get a great view at the front of that Victorian home. That gigantic home only has 2 bedrooms in it. The entire second floor is the ballroom that Judge Harris used to entertain his guests. In 1513, Ponce de Leon sailed off of our coast. He was searching for drinking water for his crew in the Fountain of Youth. 68 nautical miles west of here, he came upon a group of islands whose only inhabitants were giant sea turtles. He named these islands Las Tortugas. They were later renamed to the Dry Tortugas because there was not any drinking water on the island, nor was the Fountain of Youth there. Located on Garden Key in the Dry Tortugas stands the largest wood structure in the Western Hemisphere, Fort Jefferson. Fort Jefferson took over 30 years to build and 16 million bricks. You may have heard the expression, your name is Mud. Well, this originated from Dr. Samuel Mudd, who was imprisoned at Fort Jefferson for setting the leg of John Wilkes Booth, the assassin of President Abraham Lincoln. During the 16 and 1700s, Indians sailed through the Keys on their way to the Caribbean for trading. Legend has it that a great battle occurred on the islands, and when the Spaniards arrived, the island was covered with bones. They then gave it the name Cayo Hueso, which means Island of Bones. That was later anglicized, but that's the only one that remains standing. Henry Morrison Flagler teamed up with John D. Rockefeller in his youth, and they formed the Standard Oil Company. After making their fortune in oil, Mr. Flagler decided to try the railroad business, and in 1896 he extended the East Coast Railroad from St. Augustine to Miami. In 1905, against all odds and advice, he started the overseas extension of the railroad, and in 1912 our first road, as we pass by, you'll notice that construction was never completed. It was begun in 1862, but around that time rifled cannons were developed that could easily penetrate the walls of the West Martello Tower. Today it's home to the Key West Garden Club, and the Gardens Club annual flower show has even been featured twice by National Geographic magazine. Extending into the water and to your right is the White Street Fishing Pier. The body of water that you see are the Straits of Florida. The Straits of Florida where the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean meet, and there are over 600 species of marine life in the Straits. I'm sure you notice how calm the water looks and that we don't have any waves crashing upon our shore. Well, that's because we're fortunate enough to have the longest living coral reef in North America and the third longest in the world just 5 miles off of our shore. The reef starts just south of Miami and ends at Loggerhead Key 70 nautical miles west of here. It is the reef that's responsible for the clean water surrounding our island, as well as our profitable shipwreck salvaging industry of the 1800s. On the island, so we tried tourism once again, but we did not put in the bill for it, not the relief administration. Much of what you have seen has been built there in the 1980s and 90s, and tourism is the number one industry today. It employs 60% of our residents directly. The average temperature on the island is the balmy 79 degrees. The hottest it's ever been is 97, and the coldest 41, both recorded in 1886. That gives Key West the distinction of being the only cross at its widest point. We're now pulling out onto Roosevelt Boulevard, named after President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Ahead of us at the stoplight is the only entrance or exit to our island by automobile. It's the Overseas Highway. US 1 starts in Key West and ends 2,209 miles north of us in Fort Kent, Maine. The Bob place if Bill wanted to go deep sea fishing, you could come down there about 7:30 in the morning and talk to the skippers of the boats and book yourself a half-day or full-day fishing tour. All the way across the water to the right, that 6-story tall white building with the words Flying Navy written on it, that's the bachelor's officers' quarters on Trumbull Point of the Naval Air Station at Boca Chica. Trumbull Point was named for Howard Trumbull, chief engineer of Flagler's Overseas Railroad. We're back on Roosevelt Boulevard once again, which occurred about once a week during the 1850s. It was important that you were the first captain to the wreck because you were given formal salvage rights to the vessel. The salvage could range from fine hand-tooled leathers, silks and satins, whiskey, rum, or spices, or even furnishings for your home. On the left, behind the white picket fence, if you look to the top of the John Lowell Jr. home, you'll see a restored captain's walk. While the ship's captain was at sea, his wife could be seen atop of the walk, and if by some chance he did not return, it was renamed to a widow's walk. The corner, if you look to the left on top of the unpainted building, you'll see an enclosed captain's walk. That's a mirador. The two very tall palm trees to our right, those are Washingtonian palms or petticoat palms. And the national flower of Cuba is next. To the left of the train, the gorgeous yellow one. That's the Alamanda. Mahogany was quite a popular wood that was used in shipbuilding and thus necessary for repairs. The next 5 trees on the right of the train, the ones with the black bark, are West Indian mahogany trees. Ship's captains planted mahogany trees all over our island, but unfortunately by the time the trees had matured where they could be used for shipbuilding, we were using steel-hulled ships. So today we just have our mahogany trees for their shade and their beauty. Ahead of the train on the right corner, that's a Spanish laurel tree, a member of the ficus family, characteristic of its aerial root system. In 1928, Ernest Hemingway first came to the island. He was hoping to pick up his Ford automobile at our dealership. Well, when he got to the dealership, the car wasn't ready, and he was offered free lodging at the hotel above, the Casa Antigua. To the left of the train, the tan building that has the 6 brown balconies, that's the Casa Antigua Hotel. It was there that he finished a farewell to arms, and he was invited to go deep sea fishing, and the rest is history. Papa Hemingway fell in love with our island life and decided to make Key West his home for a little over 10 years. The building to our right, that's the federal courthouse. It's made of key limestone, and if you get close enough to the building, you can still see the marine fossils embedded in the stone. Across the street on the right corner, you'll see another unpainted home. That's the Cypress House, made entirely of cypress wood. Cypress wood was left unpainted because it's a very oily wood, and paint does not adhere to it well. The red brick building we're approaching on the right is home to Key West handprint fashion, one of our first tourist attractions on the island. They have over 3,000 original hand silk screen designs. In the 1800s, that building was used by William Curry and Son as a tobacco warehouse. Then in the 1920s and 30s, We held local boxing matches in the building. Ernest Hemingway refereed quite a few of them. To the right of the train, the tan building with the dark green trim. That was built in 1903 and served as our Coca-Cola bottling factory. Coke was only bottled in Key West during the summer months though, because of the ample supply of rainwater. So we have traveled the whole perimeter of the island now, and we're going to take a short break at our station, about 8 or 10 minutes. Inside the station, you'll find restrooms located in the rear of the gift shop, as well as a photo bar and a snack bar with some home and goodie items that you want to budge. Also, you can view your souvenir photos, which were taken a little earlier. You're under no obligation at all with the photos, though, so please be sure to go take a look and see how they came out. I'll be giving you a reboarding call in about 8 minutes. At that time, we'll reboard the same engine, number 105, and set off for the next part of our tour, which will take us downtown on Duval Street and throughout a historic residential district. To the right of the train, you'll see Clark, our world-famous photographer. He's putting your photos up now for you to view. Please remain seated until we do come to a complete stop. I'll give you a reboarding call in about 8 minutes. At that time, you could return to your original seats on engine number 105. That'll help avoid confusion, and we'll set on to the next part of our tour. Watch your step as you exit the train. This is also the site of our natural deepwater harbor, and during the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, our shrimp fleet was docked here for over 500 vessels. In the 1980s, as we overfished the shrimp beds and their numbers declined drastically, they moved out to Stock Island, where they're presently located today. Ahead of the train to the right inside of that yellow building, you can see pictures from the old turtle canning days. And to the right of the train, you'll see our road map. Maybe you can find your hometown or someplace you'd like to travel to. Harvesting giant green sea turtles was outlawed in 1971 when they were made an endangered species. Another one of our endangered species is the Florida manatee. Jimmy Buffett, our local balladeer, is a firm supporter of the Save the Manatee Fund, and he once donated over $35,000 to help produce signs to warn boaters of manatee areas. We'll be making a ride onto Caroline Street, made somewhat famous by Jimmy Buffett, in a song that he wrote about a woman on Caroline Street. The last house at the end of the block on the left, the one with the red doors, tells the history of Key West and its various uses. It's been a grocery store, a hardware store, a tobacco warehouse, a ship chandlery, a sponge exchange, and once the roughest bar on the Gulf Coast, the Bucket of Blood. We're now turning down William Street. William Street was unaffected by the Great Fire of 1886, and all the homes are original. I'm going to turn off the PA system, let you play sponge, and just absorb the serenity of the street. Across the street on the right behind the white picket fence. It'll then be on your left. That home was built on Green Turtle Key in the Bahamas in the early 1800s. Ship captain had built and moved to Key West. This his home so much he had it disassembled, loaded on a barge, and brought here in 1847. Behind the white picket fence to our left, the home with the aqua shutters. That's where Calvin Klein lived in the 1980s. That home was built by Richard Pekin, our largest grocer at the time in the 1880s. We've now crossed over the highest point on the island, starting our downhill trek on Eaton Street. Eaton Street was named after our Secretary of War in 1834. The huge terracotta pot that's to the right of the train is the tinahoni. Tinahonis were placed in ship hulls where they would be filled with fresh water and then used as ballast for the ship and also drinking water for the crew. If a tinahoni actually survived the ship's voyage, it was taken out of the hull of the ship and placed in the captain's front yard or backyard, or would be used much like a cistern was to collect fresh water. The United Methodist Church to the left of the train is known as the Old Stone Church because those walls are over 2 feet thick, made of key limestone. Dr. Otto was our most popular surgeon on the island. He lived in the second home on the left, the one with the lavender shutters, now known as the Artist House. If you have a chance to take the walking tour of the Key West Cemetery, it's quite interesting. You'll visit Dr. Otto's spot, and you'll see that he has his 3 terriers buried with him, as well as his 60 deer. On our left, once again, is St. Paul's Episcopal Church. And probably my favorite attraction on the island is St. Paul's. I like to go in and look at the stained glass windows. They're really gorgeous. And each of the windows was donated in someone's name, usually one of the original settlers. And it has a date on them. You can't appreciate the windows from the outside, though, because they are covered with a Lexan coating. That helps protect them from the sun and the salt. As we go by, behind it is the Cosgrove home built in 1872. Well, let's just get rather bumpy now with our first paved road in Key West, which probably hasn't been paved since then. Originally done by Civil War soldiers to bring cannons and cannonballs from the harbor in front of us to Fort Zachary Taylor behind us. The 2 buildings on our right are known as the Pigeon House. We used to raise carrier pigeons there. That was also the site of Pan American Airways' first international ticket office. Pan American's first international flight left Key West in 1927, bound for Havana, Cuba. John James Audubon came to the Florida Keys in 1832 to paint our wildlife. He stayed in the last home on the right behind the right picket fence. That home was built in 1830. The unpainted building you'll see to your left, that's the shipwreck Astoria. You can't climb to the top of the tower and look out to the reef. Maybe you can spot a shipwreck. The next unpainted building on our left where it says Caribbean Cargo, that's the old Fisherman's Cafe. It used to be located in the Turtle Crawls area before we brought it down to Mallory Square. Ahead of the train now is Mallory Dock. That's where world-famous sunset celebration takes place. The sign to our right says sunsets at 5:39. I recommend going out at 4:39 then to enjoy the street fair type atmosphere. They have juggling acts and animal acts and sword swallowers and all kinds of neat activities, as well as some local food like conch chowder and conch fritters. Sure like to thank you for spending an hour and a half of your morning with me on the phone train. If I can answer any questions for you about what to do or what to see while you're on the island, feel free to come up to the front of the cab at the end of the tour. I also have the free walking maps for you and the $1 off coupons for the Historium. And I do have dining guides for you as well with some key lime pie recipes. Please remain seated until we do come to a complete stop. Once again, thank you very much for riding the world-famous Contour train. And if you're ever in Key West again, we hope to see you. Thank you.
Done.